Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Cravotta, and it is my true honor today to host our Fireside chat with WordPress co founder and Automattic CEO Matt Mullenweg and Automattic's lead architect for Gutenberg, Matías Ventura. We're connecting virtually today, too. I'm in Austin, Texas, Matt's in Houston, and Matías is in Madrid. It's a true global connection. You guys, on behalf of WP Engine, I just want to thank you so much for joining Decode 2023 to share your thoughts and your inspiration with the thousands of people who are gathered. Both of you are really so admired in the community. How about we start with a few questions that'll help everyone get to know you a little bit? Are you guys down for that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
of course.
Great. So maybe we could start with what you may be reading or listening to right now that you're getting some inspiration from or you're enjoying.
For me, I always love Krista Tippett's On Being podcast. So that's one of my favorites.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Nice.
As I'm reading a Uruguayan poet, Uruguayan French poet from the 1900s. That's kickstarted sort of like the surrealist movement and so on. It's pretty
Oh, that sounds
enjoyable.
amazing. I love it. I love it. I don't know if you guys have a favorite band from your youth, or maybe there's something current that if you had a fantasy concert that you could go to right now, who would it be? Matías, do you think on your mind?
I think from my youth I would love to see Neil Young.
Oh, nice. That would be great. Matt, what about you?
I think back to the saxophone players. So I did get to see Sonny Rollins live once, but someone who had maybe passed before I was born, like a John Coltrane, would have been amazing to see live.
Amazing. I agree. I would love that too. I would love that too. Okay, I know you all both enjoy photography. So if you could have a fantasy photojournalism retreat, what would it be? Where would you go?
On my list right now, I really want to go to two places I want to go in the world are Morocco, I've never been, and Jeju Island in South Korea. And yeah, just both kind of corners of the planet I haven't made it to yet, and both seem really special and beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I've been to Marrakesh and I can't recommend it highly enough. It's so phenomenal. Absolutely stunning. Matthias, what about you?
It's a hard question for me. I don't know. I think like can find like inspiring and beauty almost everywhere. So it's like I don't know. Maybe I would pick like somewhere like in south of Argentina, like Ushuaia, so that region that seems speaks a lot to me. But yeah, I don't know. Like almost anywhere in the world, really.
Oh, that's so inspiring that it's true you can capture beauty anywhere. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Okay, so we've got a giant developer audience, so we have to ask the coding question. What was your first coding language?
And I was serious, and it was probably Pearl. And there was an O'Reilly book. What was that book called? I forget. It was like had an animal on it. They referred to it by the animal.
Uh-huh.
The camel book, maybe? Or yeah. So Pearl was probably the first one I was serious about. Before that, I had done some like Mac stuff on like maybe HyperCard or other things, but it wasn't as serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
I think that the one that comes to mind for me is ActionScript, like Flash, Macromedia Flash times. I think that's how I started tinkering with it. I was doing like animation stuff or films and so on. So that's what piqued my interest, I think.
Right. So cool. Thank you guys. Well, I love it. We're close to celebrating 20 years of WordPress. So great that we can celebrate that together. Phenomenal transition from its genesis as a blogging platform to now we've got a lot of people watching today who like it's the scaffolding for some of the most sophisticated, complex websites in the world. So I would love, Matt, like maybe you could just talk about the magic and the drivers of this growth of WordPress that you've witnessed, and what do you think's behind the magic?
Sure. Gosh, I mean, the first thing if we're going to talk about why WordPress is what it is today, is at its foundation, its license. You know, it's under our open source license, which means that it has shared ownership from everyone in the world who wants it. Like you own WordPress just as much as I do. So that's really powerful. And that's, I think, a good foundation on which everything else is built. Because we have this shared ownership, we've been able to bring together a community of people who like working on it, right? Because it's nice to work on something that you're an owner of. And so, uh, over the years, I think the story of WordPress is really a story of community.
Mhm.
And that just from the very beginning, with Michael Little and I, who had never met in person, collaborating across the Atlantic Ocean, um, growing to additional developers, additional contributors, the creation of plugins and themes. All of these were really thinking about not like, it's not just the code, but it's also the ecosystem around it. It's the incentives, it's the alignment, it's the environments that we're creating. And I think that's really something we strive to do in the WordPress community is create a really positive, healthy environment for people to come together for a shared mission, so democratize publishing, and have fun doing it.
Yes, here to community. It's everything. What do you think is required for all of us who stand for a free and open web to keep things thriving for the next 20 years?
Mm. Well, that's a tough one, but I think you really need to go back to the principles of things. So, open source, in some ways, is like a moral framework that any of us can think about and say, well, 20 years, would I want to live in a world where more of my software every day is like closed and proprietary and controlled by like a single person or company, or where, it's developed by community and belongs to me just as much as it belongs to anyone else? I want more of that latter. So that's sort of where I've chosen to put my professional years and intellectual output into. And then also voting with your wallet. So, when you support companies like a WP Engine who don't just provide a commercial service, but are also part of a wider open source community, you're saying like, hey, I want more of this in the world.
Mhm.
So when you give your dollars there versus like, Wix or Shopify, one of these proprietary things, like it's not just that you're getting great software, you're also getting that software continues to be made because so much of whatever you spend in the WordPress ecosystem gets reinvested back into the thing that again you own. So it's like everyone's a shareholder in WordPress because we all have the fruits of the labor.
I love that, Matt. It seems like it's about consciousness of choice because I think it's so easy in this world that we live in now that's so fast paced. And I mean, certainly the nature of the web has created this new paradigm that we're all living in that you may inadvertently not be conscious of those, to your point, where your wallet goes. Are you choosing freedom? Are you choosing convenience? And what's the big picture for you and what you support?
Well, I think on the other side, then it's the responsibility of developers like Matías and myself to then create the best user experience because people, what do they say? They don't want to drill, they want a hole in the wall. They're trying to solve a problem.
Right,
And so even myself, who believes deeply in open source, I use an iPhone, which isn't fully open source because it's the best phone out there.
right.
So if we want there to be more open source in the world, we need to make it the default and easy choice for just someone who actually doesn't care at all about the philosophy. So we need to come together and build the very best software. So that's what we go to sleep every night thinking about and wake up every morning thinking about.
Right, right, right. That's the battle cry for all of us. Matthias, I'd love your thoughts on this also. We're starting out with like the deep questions
Yeah, yeah,
first.
yeah. No, but I think that yeah, that confluence of both like again the openness, the sort of the deep root that open source has, but also marrying that with like a really really good user experience. I think that's initially also what attracted me to WordPress. It was like the idea that you could have like both that expansive sense of and the way I see it is like learning from everyone, right? Like I remember, I think Matt, it was I think a WordCamp you did in Buenos Aires or something, and I remember reading like a news article on the paper or something, and you were like comparing it to learning music. Like you have access to the world's music everywhere to learn from it. Like, and that aspect, I think, to me is really it really resonates with me. The fact that, again, myself, when I started, I was learning from it. Everyone can learn from it. That, I think, that to me is really important. And if we can combine that with actually really good software, it's really powerful. Yeah.
Mhm. I agree with you. I agree with you. Um, okay, we're all celebrating WordPress, 43% of the web, amazing. And Matt, I know you've shared with others that you think it's possible that we could get to 85%. I wonder if you might say more about that. What are your thoughts on that, and what would have to happen?
Well, what would have to happen is WordPress would need to remain super responsive to the needs of our our community, our clients, our developers, our everything. And if we continue to evolve and grow, and if we're able to keep our pace of iteration really fast and create lots of opportunities for people, then I think that uh, it could become like a default part of the fabric of the web, much in the same way like Linux has for operating systems on the web, or um, so many things we probably take for granted. And when that happens, people might not even think of WordPress that much anymore. It'll just be like kind of default.
Hmm.
And there's always going to be others. I think that's actually great and healthy. But we want to make sure that WordPress is maybe like a good default that can just provide a base layer so people don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I mentioned creating the opportunities. You know, neither Matthias or myself had any formal background in like doing what we do today, computer science or building things. I think that one of the special things about WordPress, and probably many of the people listening today, um, is that because it's open, is no like charge to learn it, to use it, and when you learn these skills, it's very commercially valuable because now all of a sudden you can be sort of a WordPress ambassador or translator for many other people who want to sell more muffins or, or bring more people to the restaurant
Right.
or maybe just blog and share their writings online. So it's a very marketable and commercial skill. So that ecosystem is also something that we want to continue building. And yeah, I always want there to be lots of demand for WordPress, people building WordPresses, and lots of supply of people learning how to do more WordPress.
Yeah, it is a really beautiful way to make a living. There's so many people tuned in today that are like in any pocket of the world and building websites, designing themes, plugins, and can do it from anywhere, and so much freedom of expression and freedom to to play and to innovate, and to your point, like leverage the foundation that could then be pulled through in any number of ways. So yeah, I love it. Like here to 85. Let's do it. Let's do it. So there was a statement made famous 2022, not too long ago, state of the word: Gutenberg will be bigger than WordPress. Matt, what did you mean by that?
Actually, I know I said it, but I kind of want Matthias to talk about this if you're up
I
for
know.
it.
Okay, Matthias, how does it land for you? What does it mean for you?
Ah, I don't know. It's both. I think it's a really interesting frame to think about the like what we're doing, because it's like it both, like, I think, broadens the horizon of what we're, I think, and that really gives us and the team and everyone working on it like the perspective to see like a bit further ahead of where we might be. It's also like again, sort of intentionally, like a big responsibility. Like WordPress is really huge, and what does it mean that we also have an opportunity here to shape other software outside of WordPress, by bringing some of the ideas of WordPress, because I think I don't see it just as Gutenberg, the tool itself, but like, are we like embedding other ideas from WordPress itself into it, like the way that we approach software, the way we approach user experience, the way we approach sharing things. Um, and then yes, like you have like the obvious things that we're seeing, like a lot of projects like take advantage of Gutenberg without necessarily having to depend or use WordPress. I've seen like a few projects where people were using WordPress just for like the editing experience, but publishing somewhere else. Like there's a lot of like combinations, I think, that um, give us a lot of flexibility to like I think pursue just better user experiences across, like distribute better user experiences across the web. Um,
Yeah, if you think of our mission to democratize publishing, our mission is not to get everyone to use WordPress. We want to increase freedom and agency and access for people all over the world. And so with Gutenberg now, that editor can be embedded in other applications. And we're trying to introduce a common user interface and technical framework for what I would call kind of the primitives of building the web, the basic building blocks. Just like there is a periodic table of elements, and everything you look around and see in your room or your body or the world is made from those elements. Um, there's a set of blocks, and putting them together in different ways, you can build literally anything you can imagine, just like the elements. And
Right.
so
yeah.
if we can, no one product can own that. And if we do it right, I would love for even Wix or Squarespace to use Gutenberg in the future, because that means that, when their developers improve something like the image block, that could be shared back to everyone else. And then most importantly, when someone learns how to use one of these blocks, because they learned WordPress or something like that, they'll now be able to use that interface everywhere else on the web that Gutenberg is used. So that's why we actually have done the work to make Gutenberg an even more, it's called permissive license or open license.
Okay.
Or I would say permissive license than what WordPress itself is under. So WordPress says, the GPL says like, use it, modify it, and you have to share your modifications. So that way it kind of gets better all the time. But it
Okay.
can make it a little tricky to embed inside a commercial app, which is not open source. With Gutenberg, we've tried to say that, hey, if you want to embed this even in something that's not open source, the whole thing isn't open source, that's okay.
You can.
And so
Okay.
part of why, um, yeah, we're aiming to build something, again, for humanity, for the web, not just for the WordPress community. We're going to be the first and best user of Gutenberg, but I love seeing it being adopted by other applications. And if anyone listening to this is building something that has nothing to do with WordPress, but it has a text editor, like really look at Gutenberg. You should probably be
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the cool things as well is that I think initially like we're going to see the adoption through like the text editor, but it's also now like getting to be like a really interesting design tool. So like how can that like shape into other projects that maybe they are not really strictly a text editor, but they are more like around design tools, which they have seen, I think, like a strong renaissance over the last several years, like with especially like web-based design tools, like obviously Figma, but there's like many others. They're really interesting to see like how what people can take from those primitives that are not just now about text writing, but also about designing websites and what they can do with it.
There's so much freedom and flexibility when you can get to that componentized approach. Um, and I love the vision that you just laid out. That's super cool. Super cool. Matthias, there's so many elements of full site editing. Is there one that you think has really moved Gutenberg forward faster than others?
I think to me it will have to be patterns. I think that's one of the like new things that we introduce that sort of like emerge naturally. Like there's an obvious need for something like this, but I think it's sitting at a place that I find really interesting because confluence of it's the confluence of blocks, but it's also what's allowing like us to distribute like design primitives that are not as granular. They are a bit more all encompassing. Like you can distribute a design for a header, a design for a hero section, whatever. It's I think it's a very interesting place to also look from the perspective of AI. Like I think that's going to be more than like blocks themselves. I think like how you put them together, like that opens so many possibilities for like exploring tools, exploring ways. Like in the directory we have like hundreds of patterns, and it eventually becomes hard to like discover them and put them together and so on. So I think there's a lot of yeah, it's just like a new breed of opportunities coming up around patterns. And well, even like I think WP Engine has also been exploring a lot of like really cool tools with the pattern builder and so on. Like I think there's a lot of interest in the community as well to like um, see where this leads. I think um, we haven't written all the chapters about patterns yet,
Yeah.
and that to me is very exciting. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, AI is just so exciting. Chat GPT and my profession is like it's an existential moment as a content person in this lifetime. Um, but yeah, Matt, say more about your thoughts on the wave of AI innovation currently and the just anything that you feel like sharing on that front in terms of where we'd go with WordPress in connection to it.
Yeah, I'm reminded a lot of there's a famous Steve Jobs passage. I won't do it justice, so look it up, but where he talks about different forms of kind of input of energy to motion. Are there's some animals that are obviously faster than humans, right? Like jaguars or things that can move faster. But actually, the most efficient thing that we're aware of um, for converting energy to motion is a human on a bicycle, right? So just that energy to motion ratio is more efficient than
Yeah,
anything that nature
I love
itself
that.
designed or evolved, which is kind of amazing.
That is.
Um, and so he then called computers a bicycle for the minds, and that it can convert sort of the energy of your mind, the creativity, into it can augment it. And what I'm seeing with AI is, um, hopefully what I think is like grist for the mill inspiration for people who are creative and making original work to find a starting place. we all know we all know how tough it is to look at like a blank page or something like that. And so having AI be kind of like your co-pilot or assistant that's giving you lots of ideas, or maybe you ask it to do something, it generates 5 or 20 of them, and then you pick the best one and then iterate from there. Like think of it like that. So a lot of times when people try out these tools, which by the way, everyone listening to this should, they go in, they give it one prompt, and they're like, "Oh, that wasn't that good." But that's not how you're supposed to use it. That would be like making one brush with your paint stroke and be like, "Oh, the painting's not done." Like
Right,
it's
right.
really think of it as part of your creative or generative process, whether that's coding, writing, whatever it is that you're creating and giving to the world. Um, yeah, go
Yeah,
back and forth with the AI, just you might go back and forth with a colleague. Um, it's a colleague that's available 24/7 and always there. Uh, if you're just copy and pasting things out of ChatGPT, that's probably not going to be that valuable. I'm sure Google's going to penalize that in the future, things like that. But if you're using it as like part of creating something brand new and inspiring you to ever higher heights, then I think that's where you're going to find the most value.
yeah, I agree. It's like a brainstorm accelerator and access to this massive brain. And then you can still infuse the absolutely necessary human creativity. But it's true, editing is easier than writing from a blank slate. And so why not? Why not? Um, very, very cool. So I'm going to shift a little bit, you guys. Let's talk accessibility. So we know there's this challenge that to address multilingual, big world that we live in, and enabling disabilities. Can you share some thoughts, Matthias, on Gutenberg roadmap and what's the vision there?
Yeah, yeah. It's an ongoing, like very like I think both rewarding and difficult path, because I think we're one thing we started realizing pretty soon with the editor is like just the breadth of experiences that people have or that people find adequate for themselves to um, even like trivial things, like we have this setting about like the top toolbar, and once we started like user testing, like it comes to like the preferences are pretty split between the like what is better and what is worse. And so I think that has brought like a perspective into how we approach accessibility that I think is contemplating the idea more that it's not like one size fits all, and that we can like start really yeah, really expanding and investing into like what are the solutions that we can do, like how can we create like, I don't know, the best experience for people that are only interacting with the keyboard in a certain way. How can we create like the best experience for people that just want everything out of the way, because any sort of visual noise just becomes like a cognitive burden to them. And it's like, again, it's hard to say like, oh, everyone should have the same experience there. So how can we shape things in a way that accommodates everyone? I think we have a lot of room there to like show as an open source project to really show like how can we really cater to as many people as possible. And multilingual to me, like it's also an interesting one. Like again, you could say, even from the perspective of like, if you have a site that's where you only write in a single language and you put like all of this burden into it, like it's like, okay, this might be too much for that person. But someone that is unable to express and they speak two languages and they really want to do that, like, it becomes a limitation. So it's really about the yeah, recognizing that the more we want to get to 85% and so on, like we're talking about like essentially every possible human experience, accommodating it somehow. And that to me personally is incredibly challenging and rewarding just to
Mhm.
pursue.
Worthy and a worthy challenge. Yeah, I can get that it's really, really hard. Matt, did you want to add anything?
No, that was great.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Matías. So Jason Cohen shared in his session today that he really felt like the introduction of Gutenberg has given so much more power to the site owner and the marketer, which of course, as a marketer, I love personally. And I wondered if you might just explore that sentiment that Jason shared.
Yeah, often when we're being grandiose, we think of our task as Prometheus, right? Prometheus took the fire from the gods and brought it to the people. Like, what are things that before you might have had to spend thousands or tens of thousands to do, or be an expert in the software that we can make easy, that we can automate, that we can make just a few clicks. And so, um, then that means the experts will figure out something new. That's just how kind of like human progress and technological progress works. Um, but then putting the creative tools in the hands of many is obviously very, very, very exciting. And part of what I have loved to see is just the vast for like now that Gutenberg's out there and patterns in particular, people are making websites that are a lot more unique. I feel like reflect themselves a lot more.
Mhm.
And so when you put these tools in the hands of people, I think we get to enjoy more of the range of like human diversity and expression versus all websites kind of looking a little bit the same, which we got in there for like 5 or 10 years actually. There was a period
Yeah,
of design on the web,
yeah,
but you
Yeah.
can kind of tell like, oh, okay, it's all kind of
yeah,
like it's like one aesthetic or one kind of school of design. And I just really want to see a variety out there, just like in
Yeah.
yeah.
art for me.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting as well, because I remember that was one of our concerns as well, was like, oh, now that we have blocks, are like all themes going to look like blocky? And I think it's been really nice to see that that hasn't been the case. Like people are really taking and to me that has really opened up like a whole new audience to WordPress as well. Like um, probably like around, I don't know, mid last year, when we started seeing like designers like just use the tool, like design the thing entirely themselves. That to me was really eye-opening, because like again, I got started with WordPress doing themes, and it required you to like both like learn code, learn design, like and do a mixture. That was probably leaving a lot of people outside. Like we go back to like the topics of accessibility, how to really expand, like, and now we're seeing like designers that haven't touched code at all be able to contribute and express and share with the world their creations. That to me was really like really nice to see. And then that the result of that is also more expression and not that things look the same is really wonderful.
Yes.
I have to put a plug here for the for people to Google later. Look up the Museum of Block Art.
Hmm.
So there's an online museum that's been created around showing like art and interesting things people can do with blocks. So if you're ever feeling like in a creative rut, it's kind of cool to see what people are able to put together with blocks.
That is a great
Yeah.
tip. I'm totally going to do that. Thank you. Awesome. Well, think about Wix and Squarespace and some folks moving into this world of building a site in a day. Do you feel like that is the ease of where block editing is going?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's just the first step, as we all
Yeah.
know, especially yourself as a marketer.
Totally.
Building the site is it you can't just build it and they will come. Like, that's just creating the environment, which then it's going to be something that you nurture and grow like a garden over, months and
Yeah.
years through continued attention. And those are the websites that are going to stand out to people over time. And that's really where WordPress shines. Like some of these other things are really great at like making a website super quickly or like a one-page website or link in bio or whatever they get. But then like, 6
No
months
room
later,
for
they just start
iteration.
doing
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I
you
can
know
vouch that we have the team here. It's our job. We're redesigning the wpengine.com right now, and it's not going to be one and done when we launch. We're, okay, what are we doing in Q2? Okay, what are we going to do at the end of the summer? And it's a
Yeah.
never-ending thing. And as marketers, we want to be nimble, and we love our devies, and we also want some of that autonomy of expression to move fast and tell our stories. Yeah,
totally.
so cool. I agree. WordPress enables that, which is awesome. Um, well, you guys, this has been an amazing session with you. I just so enjoy it. I think maybe a great question to close as we're celebrating 20 years of WordPress. Maybe each of you could share, if you had a crystal ball, predictions for WordPress in the next decade.
Matías, why don't
Matthias,
you kick it off?
yeah,
um, it's it's tough to jump so much ahead. I try to think like again, if you go back 20 years and you would like if I would have imagined like the next 20 years, and I would probably have fallen short. So whatever I say, I think that's the one truth is that it's going to fall short. I think from where WordPress is going to be at in 20 years. I think some things will remain true though. I think that like what I really want to see is like that expansion of catering to all the facets of human creativity and expression. Which I think all the tools that are appearing, like AI, all of these things, how can we like combine that and keep giving back to people so that they can express things? And it can be like trivial things from like, again, we talk about link in bio, and with WordPress, you can have a link in bio, but you can also add more pages and you can have like more things around the whole experience, and how that expands into whatever we might be doing in 10, 15, 20 years. I think WordPress like has to be deeply rooted to that human experience, and I think um, we'll be like flying with whatever things take us as humans.
cool. Thank you.
I'm always drawn to I think it was originally Dennis Gabor who originally said this, which is you can't predict the future, but you can invent it. And so what's neat
Yeah,
about like Matthias, myself, everyone listening today is like you can create the future that you want to be in. And so
yeah,
what I'm going to be working on is more open source software, a
Mhm.
web that's more open and connected, open APIs, putting more control back in the
yeah,
hands of the people basically, so that we have choices. We're served by companies, not serving companies. So they can create things and we can choose to use them. And we also have a choice to maybe use something else. And that I think keeps them honest, creates more freedom in the world. And that is something that, I can imagine everything in WordPress changing. That's not going to change. So that's probably the easiest thing to
yeah,
predict for 20 years from now.
yeah, yeah,
I love it,
yeah.
you guys. Love it.
Yeah.
Do you have like a closing battle cry for Team Open?
Mm.
Like how can everyone that's Team Open here today contribute to?
Yeah.
What I always return to is, well, one, developing empathy. So when you can really understand your client, your customer, everything, that's where great design and great products and great software comes from. And then the second is just remembering, like, I mean, look around you wherever you are today. Everything at one point was like an idea in someone's head and was created, probably not by a person, but by a team actually working together.
Yeah.
And so, like, feel an agency that if something that you could imagine being better in the WordPress world or anywhere really, that you can do that. There's not like anything special about the person who made, your computer or your desk or your phone or anything that's different from the same, things you were born with. So, like, really don't limit your ambition in affecting change in the world if you have a passion for it.
I love it. I love it. You guys, I think we're at time. Thank you again so much. It's been fabulous to meet you virtually. I hope to meet you in person someday. And thank you again. And I know everyone here is going to really appreciate the opportunity to engage with you. Everyone who's tuned in today, thank you so much for your time and for joining Decode in this amazing session with Matt Mullenweg and Matías Ventura. It's been our pleasure to host. And thank you again for being here. Have a great day.